And Kamala, I was going to vote for her. I've been kind of leaning more Democrat throughout the years, but she was asked twice, right? During the debate and this interview she had on ABC. And twice they asked her how she was going to make American lives better. She didn't have an answer. She talked about how she grew up. What are you going to do to help us? 3 weeks ago, Trump comes out with the no tax on tips. That's going to help people that are waiters, waitresses, bartenders. A few days ago, he comes out with no tax on overtime. That is huge.
We have a major update that signals disaster for Kamala Harris. We're talking about a post-debate polling that shows that she's in trouble. Now, the most important thing to pay attention to in this video that we're going to focus on is how policy is winning this election up to this point. And to give you guys a few examples before we get into the polls, let's understand the backstory. Watch.
A survey from the Council of American Islamic Relations found that 40% of Michigan's Muslim American voting population plan to back Green Party candidate Jill Stein. 18% plan to support President Trump. 12% want VP Harris, and 4% plan to vote for Cornel West. This seems pretty significant, Kyle, specifically after more than 100,000 voters in Michigan in the primary voted uncommitted. Is this a massive red flag for the Harris campaign, given that there's only about 7 weeks until Election Day?
It is, and for a couple reasons. I mean, think about the mainstream coverage of Donald Trump and Muslims. It is 100% negative. And so the fact that this poll shows, and it's a CARE poll, which, you know, CARE does not like Donald Trump. But the fact that this poll shows that more Michigan Muslims support Donald Trump than supports Kamala Harris is, I mean, that is major. But then when you look at the top line of the poll, and it shows that 40% of Michigan Muslims support Jill Stein, to me, that is major red flags for Harris. And there's been a lot of coverage about the fact that is RFK going to Jill Stein. To me, that is major red flags for Harris. And there's been a lot of coverage about the fact that is RFK going to be on the ballot? Is he not going to be on the ballot in Michigan? Cornel West, as RFK was put back on the ballot, Cornel West was also put on the ballot, and so he theoretically is going to take votes away from Kamala Harris. But she has a major problem with Michigan Muslims because they don't like what Biden has done, and she, of course, has, in their opinion, has not been outspoken enough. And so this is a very significant problem for her because there are hundreds of thousands of Muslims who are very paying attention to what is going on. And so I think what we'll see is that this is going to get worse if it ever gets better.
Now let's just look at the numbers. So in the present moment, when we look at the different swing states, Muslim voters are favoring Jill Stein, right? Because her whole campaign, like at the top of the list, is a ceasefire immediately. Okay. And then you see in Michigan that Kamala Harris is only at 12%. So this is a problem. This is a huge issue for her campaign. This is why you saw recently that right after the debate, a poll dropped in favor of Donald Trump +1. And that was the poll called Insider Advantage that has Trump up by 1. This is an issue. And why is that? Because if we look at what happened in 2020, during this time, you'll see the biggest difference between Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as it pertains to their performance. Take a look at this. So this poll was dated September 18, 2020, and they did all of the swing states. And if we look at Michigan, Donald Trump was at 39%. Joe Biden was at 49%. Currently, Donald Trump is up +1. Even if you don't go with that, he's at least tied in that state. So a 10% difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, no difference between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. She's in big trouble in Michigan. And it comes down to those two big issues for voters. Obviously, number one, they have the largest Muslim population. They don't agree with Joe Biden or Kamala Harris as pertains to how they've handled the Hamas and Israel war. And then throw on top of that the economic factor where inflation has wrecked their ability to live the life that they want to live financially. So when you take all these things into consideration, she's not doing good in Michigan. This is a huge, huge problem. So that's why you can't get caught up in the emotional reaction from the corporate media as it pertains to the debate. You need to look at the numbers, because that is what matters more than how these people who have Trump derangement syndrome feel about Trump. And so this takes us to the newest poll that actually dropped today that is singing the same song. So this is a national poll from Atlas Intel, which, according to the polling experts, is one of the most accurate pollsters out there. News some attention because it's to be taken seriously. Donald Trump is up 50.9% nationally. Nationally. Think about that. Trump has never hit 50%. So that's why, again, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. So you have to ask yourself, why is Kamala Harris not doing as good as Democrats historically would be doing? And the reason why is her performance. If you look at how she performs in interviews, that's a problem. The way that she performed in the debate when you're talking about policy, that's a problem. And the overall image of Kamala Harris, a lot of people do not know who she is, but what they do know, it's not that positive. Okay, so there's a lot of what she said back in 2019 and 2020. That's getting as much attention as all this propaganda from the mainstream media. And throw in that people are not stupid. She's the vice president of the United States.
She was asked twice, right, during the debate and this interview she had on ABC. And twice they asked her how she was going to make American lives better. She didn't have an answer. What are you going to do to help us, right? And then what, like 3 weeks ago, Trump comes out with the no tax on tips. That's going to help people that are waiters, waitresses, bartenders, valet parkers, anybody that works for tips. And then now, a few days ago, he comes out with no tax, right, on overtime. It's that kind of shit that helps Americans, right? So after sleeping on it for a while, I'm sorry, Kamala, but I'm voting for Trump, man. I'm gonna vote for the candidate that's gonna help my life, man. And right now, Trump, you got my vote, man.
This isn't rocket science, okay? You don't need a political science degree to understand what's happening right now. Most Americans believe that the economy is doing terrible, and they are affected by that. And that sentiment is affirmed even more when Democrats continue to gaslight that notion by celebrating the fact that inflation is lower than it's ever been, and that economically this has been a successful administration. That goes in one ear and out the other when it comes to voters. They don't see it that way, and it doesn't help Kamala Harris's cause. So again, she's losing on the policy debate, which is why the poll numbers are showing what they're showing. See, Joe Biden didn't have that problem because he was running for president for the first time. So what record could they compare when it came to Joe Biden versus Donald Trump? Well, there is a record when it comes to Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and it's of her own doing because she won't separate herself from Joe Biden.
She is the worst polling Democrat against Donald Trump in history on national polls. No one is performing worse than her. No one's performing worse than her among blacks, among Hispanics, the worst performing Democrat in modern history among those demographics, worst performing polling-wise among Jews. She is losing key factions of the Democratic base. Muslim voters, she's at under 50, she's at 52% in the latest CARE poll among black Muslims. She is not doing well. She had a transformational life experience, apparently, where in 1,000 days, she has changed from a Bernie Sanders Democrat to a pro-choice Bush Democrat. She has abandoned almost every position, not just on fracking, on reparations for the sentence of slaves. She was gung-ho for a multi-trillion-dollar policy, never mentions it. She's completely against it. Obviously, the transgender illegal aliens in prison, which she did sit there and say that she was for. She was against ICE. She was for open borders, defund the police.
So we've made so many videos about that, and this guy is coming on and just exposing her once again. Van Jones could barely contain himself, just to be honest here. But listen, this is the story of her campaign. She is the worst polling Democrat, especially when you're talking about someone who's running against Trump, who a lot of people say is not the best polling Republican. Let's go over some final points about these polls and why it's truly signaling disaster for her campaign. We might have another 2016 situation where people are crying in the streets because she's going to lose. Number one, Donald Trump is going to overperform. He will. There are so many people, especially after the assassination attempt, that are going to vote for him, but they're not going to tell anyone. You guys have heard me say this repeatedly. Number two, it's the economy, stupid. People are struggling, and it's not getting any better. And the Democrats have made a huge mistake. Their messaging is still gaslighting everyday Americans who are feeling the gas prices, the grocery prices, the mortgage, the interest rates. No matter how many times they go on TV and say that our economy is the envy of the world and now inflation is at an all-time low, people are not feeling that. And my final point here, Kamala Harris and the campaign is signaling that they are going to start putting her out there after rallies to do these local interviews. If they continue to do that, I honestly believe it's going to work against them, because every time she goes in front of a camera and she cannot use a script or a teleprompter, those videos are going to get clipped and then go viral on social media. I don't think that works for her. And this is what happens when you have a weak candidate who cannot do these interviews. I mean, easy interviews. I mean, softball interviews with zero pushback. I find it crazy that she choked in that interview. And that is my mindset around this. What is yours? What do you guys think about these new poll numbers and this devastating news for her campaign? What do you think about it when you compare it to Joe Biden's performance in 2020 and then factor in that silent majority from the RFK Jr. movement, right? And the people who are going to vote for Trump but don't say anything? How do you think that all factors in? Well, let me know what your thoughts are and more in the comments section below. If you want to support the channel, go to the link in the description, grab yourself a t-shirt. Thank you so much for checking this out today. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Stay grateful, stay focused, and stay true. Peace.